The card is there.
Well, hello, and hello. I am Mrs. Jonathan Johnson, and I am absolutely delighted to be serving as your MC or Mistress of Ceremonies this evening. We welcome you to our English 700. We welcome you to our English 700 2022 Student Symposium on Critical Race Theory with the subtitle, Why Does It Matter? A rhetorical question for what we enjoy learning about in our Intro to Critical Theory class. So, of course, we are in the right place on the right date at the right time. Again, I welcome you. We are the graduate students. Graduate students, raise your hands so everybody can see that this is the next step for the undergrad. This is where you're going to be next. And we will follow the program as outlined with a program welcome by Dr. Jason DiPolo, who is the chair of the Department of English. So a round of applause as Dr. DiPolo comes forward.
All right, so thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I don't know what more I can say after that. Not much. Of course, this is your time, so I'm not about to give the stage. But I will say that this would be, the first of a long, it is actually one of many student success, symposia that we've had. Especially since Dr. Issifou has done such a fantastic job in that role over the years. So, but this is something new in that we're kind of just budding, and Dr. Kosa and Dr. Issifou and I met very consistently about developing thematic programs for the Department of English, for both undergraduate and our graduate students. Particularly, getting to a point where it's primarily focused on undergrad, but yet how then can we fold in our graduate students to serve as mentors? Mentors in the capacity involved in research. So the idea is that we would like to establish a theme early on in the fall semester, have undergraduate students engage with that theme, right, as well as, of course, allow graduate students to be aware of what that theme is through information sessions, kind of bibliography that is not too extra reading because obviously you already have classes, and to also have our professors, engage with that topic in some way in the courses that they are teaching, so that students do become familiar, like in this case, with what critical race theory is all about. And then kind of scaffold that activities through the fall semester and spring to where we bring in speakers on the subject, that we have faculty panels, so that students are better able to engage on more complex levels with what that subject is. Eventually then culminating in a symposia where they are able to present, their research. So this is almost kind of like the tail end of that process, and there was only bits and pieces of the others kind of sprinkled out, and that considering all the kind of very strange phenomena that occurred throughout the academic year regarding technology and everything else. So anyway, so we do hope to have this kind of event, but not as a kind of summative capstone only, but rather a very formative, developing, and engaging programming that lasts the entire academic year. So with that said, I do welcome you, and I do very much appreciate, you being part of this. As we all know, it's critical, right? It's critical. And I won't even say now more than ever because it's always been. And so the important thing, I think, is to take away not only what is being presented today and here, but what can you do with it, out there. So, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that informative welcome and taking us into the next steps, Dr. DiPolo. We are glad to be on the other side of COVID. still lurking, but we're glad to be on the other side of it, because without being on the other side of it, I don't think this symposium would have been able to take place. I think it was on hiatus for a while. So here we are, back in the throes of being able to meet in a room and gather and go over some good stuff. And tonight, of course, again, is critical race theory. The next item on our list is another rhetorical question, and that's why a symposium on critical race theory? So we will now hear from Dr. Costa of the Student Success Committee. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, and good evening.
Good evening.
So the purpose of this year's symposium is to highlight a legal-based academic theory that has existed for almost 50 years and only recently become a household word, critical race theory. The highly politicized alt-right platform that has made it popular is unfortunate, because this theory, which was originated by a multiracial group of legal scholars, is centered on issues around race, but is about so much more than that. It is a theory that helps us think critically about how our intersectional identities, including race, gender, religion, ability, age, social class, and sexual orientation, impact our access to institutional structures. The purpose of critical race theory is to provide a tool for analyzing institutional discourses and structures with the hope of providing data that helps reform our institutions so that all citizens have more equal access to such essential services as education, medical treatment, housing, employment, and social services. Critical race theory's primary focus is on race, but is not based on being a racist theory, but rather a theory that acknowledges the institutionalized racism that persists in the United States. The issue is not about making white people feel bad, but about understanding how all citizens are impacted by institutionalized discrimination that emanates primarily from racially based biases, but also other marginalized identities, and how as a society we can all positively engage in the work of meaningfully reforming such structures for the benefit of all citizens. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Costa, and thank you for reiterating that critical race theory is not something that just occurred over the past couple of years. It indeed has been around for several decades, but it's been made popular in, I believe, the changing culture that we're in. So thanks again. At this time, we will move forward with the introduction of our presenters by yours truly. And I will go ahead and read their bios because I know they'll need a little time to set up the flash drives and everything. On your program, you do see that the first two presenters are Shakiyah Jones and Jalen Phillips. Unfortunately, they were not able to be with us this evening. And we will move then to our next presenter as she moves forward to go ahead and set up. And that's Ms. Tiana Wilder. I'll read her bio until I see that she's ready, and whenever she's ready, I'll speed read like they do on those commercials. Catwoman, black woman, when Selena Kyle is black. Oh, and Tiana is a first-year graduate student. She hails from South Carolina like I do, and we have another South Carolinian in the house too. And while her PowerPoint is loading, since his inception in 1939, the character Batman has been through many changes. Not only has Bruce Wayne changed, but so has Wayne Manor, the Batcave, and the legendary Batmobile. Even the identity of Batman has changed throughout the years as other characters, such as the first Robin, Dick Grayson, will sometimes pick up the mantle after Bruce Wayne has retired. It is no wonder that one of the most famous Batman villains and love interests has gone through many changes herself. Throughout the years, the character of Selina Kyle, better known as Catwoman, has been portrayed as many different races and ethnicities. You can just kind of let me see your body, kind of move up here, and then I'll kind of stop reading. This is especially true on screen, where both black and white actresses play Selina Kyle. Catwoman, Black Woman explores the portrayals of Selina Kyle when she is black and the differences, whether intentional or not, created when this change occurs by using a basis of structuralist analysis and black feminist literature. Catwoman, Black Woman will examine the Batman 2021, Harley Quinn 2019, Catwoman 2004, and Batman 1966. The portrayals of Selina as a white woman in Batman 1966, Batman Returns 1992, and Batman the Animated Series 1992, which is ironically when I graduated from high school. Are you ready? Okay, I'll sit down. Okay, take it away, Tiana.
Batman is a character he was created in 1939. He DC Comics, they were originally known as Detective Comics back then, and he pretty much goes around Gotham, trying to protect the citizens and bring justice to the city. Famous villains and love interest is Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, and what makes their relationship so complicated is that, of course, they're different morals, but also the recently they did get married, however, that run kind of ended. As a number of different races. She's also been like and sorry, paper talks about how white men are active. So she states on page 61, and the sex was both encouraged and condoned as long as it did not lead to marriage, by perpetuating the myth that all black women of fidelity or sexually loose. White what sexy pose. In like season 2, it got kind of crazy because as the idea of Batman and Catwoman getting together. Julie Newmar and Eartha Kitt is that once Eartha Kitt comes to start playing Catwoman, in the Catwoman movie. And so, both of them kind of have like a similar origin story in that. So they both kind of go from the case specifically, she's wearing these really baggy clothes before she does the transformation, and then afterwards she's wearing a lot of leather, a lot of tight, cuts her hair as well. They also well, with Michelle Pfeiffer, it's more like her actions, like in the movie where she licks Batman's face instead of kissing him like, you know, you would traditionally think somebody would. And they're both very sexually the flirting and the romantic intentions. And what's within the movie. She's introduced in the 7-minute mark of the movie, and then she kind of just appears sporadically throughout the movie just because there are a lot of different villains coming in. And so she is and so and she does actually. So at the end of the movie, they actually end up running away together and restarting and living a new life. And then here at the bottom, I put. If you guys have ever seen like a Marvel movie Cancer or Black Widow, she does a lot of this, and it was just really strange because it's just like you don't have to be doing all that. Oh, I messed it up, but and the Batman. Boyfriend, and then as well as her clothes. Situations where she needed Batman to rescue her, and she also having a slight. Instead of like being a like traditional, oh, I'm working on a 9 to 5, she's both as when they're Batman and Catwoman, kind of takes the lead when it comes to the flirting, and she also does as well. Oftentimes they're and vice versa. She's made 3 appearances in the show, but only one significant appearance. And it's in the episode where Harley Quinn and and she doesn't appear for very long. She comes in at the 7-minute mark, and then 15 minutes into the episode, she's gone. And instead of they portray her as like this cool. When it's kind of like asking, and she's characterized as like somebody who's alone and someone who's very controlling, which I thought was really unique because like throughout all of this, I didn't really see that from her, except for her being characterized as that in the portrayal that she's away from Batman. And so this kind of led me to research the problem. I was like, I noticed the problem with like them trying to be structured and they're trying to build on the Catwoman that had already been pre-established, but like how what's the root of the problem? And so I came to the conclusion that DC needs to be more careful with their execution, and that pretty much just involves having more Black people behind the scenes. A lot of these portrayals had a lot of unfortunate implications. For example, for the Harley Quinn series, one of the Batman, Catwoman. They're literally like blowing people up in a bunch of episodes, so it's just like, why is that a problem? It creates the unfortunate implication that made me think back to the hooks, like, oh, like you can't between black women and white men, like you just have to leave it alone. Like it can be kind of implied, but it can't be emphasized. And I think if DC just had more people, it would help a lot. And I think they would just kind of avoid all of those really unfortunate implications. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess as far as Q&A and with respect to time, we'll just continue moving forward, and then I guess maybe if you want to get you a little parking lot and put you some questions down for later as you see these presentations, maybe we can just sort of walk back to each presentation based on any questions you may have. Thank you, Tiana. Outstanding. Thank you. We will move forward to our next presentation, but I will tell you while she's setting up and while I'm reading, there was just a few of us in here earlier, but I did clean out my pantry at home. It's the mama in me. So please feel free while Ashton is coming forward to avail yourselves of some snacks. Now you have to buy your own drinks because I didn't have a chance to stop by the grocery store. but please avail yourselves. They're relatively healthy, high in protein. The next presenter is Ashton Bryce. Ashton is a graduate of Fayetteville State University, and my daughter attends there, so she's very proud of her HBCU, and she's also happy to be here. She's a first-year graduate student as well, and of course, Tiana and Ashton are students in the English and African American Literature program. And I believe Ashton is ready. Yes, she's ready, so I won't have to read, but you all please be sure to read the description if you haven't already. Take it away, Ashton.
Hello, and good evening, everyone. I am Ashton Bryce, to those who don't know me. To those who do, hey, how y'all doing? So today I'm going to be presenting on Is the Conspiracy What They're Not Telling Us, a study in the effects of post-colonialism in modern-day Black America. And as you can see from our title slide, this presentation is heavily influenced by my Black English. So, by the time the presentation is over, we might be talking about me. Okay, so this is my table of contents, just to let you know where I'm finna pick y'all up in the car. And let y'all know by the time we get over, I'm gonna drop y'all off. So this is just where we're gonna go. So at first we're going to do the introduction to post-colonialism and folklore theory. The effects as far as pop culture, healthcare, limiting the Black aesthetic and their politics, U.S. history or lack thereof, sports, the colonization of time, and then at the end I'll have an essential question takeaway / call to action, of course, my website. So to begin, just in case anybody doesn't know what post-colonialism, I just summed it up in my definition. So post-colonialism is a theoretical approach that critically analyzes the global effects of the European colonization. This means we are taking a deep dive and analyzing the different effects that colonization has brought to the Black community in this generation. Another term to describe studying the effects of European colonization is critical race theory, or CRT. So, critical race theory is somewhat an umbrella term for Black studies. This theory tries to understand the motive and heavily critique the white supremacy while simultaneously trying to find ways to defeat it and achieve Black freedom. You may have heard this term recently regarding the recent book banning. So, this next slide is about the recent book banning. This is just a little something to think about. So I'm going to read this verbatim as well. Since January of 2021, 41 41 out of the 50 United States have been en route to restrict the teaching of critical race theory in grade schools. The state of New Hampshire just recently proposed an act relative to teaching loyalty bill that will prohibit teachers to teach lessons about any doctrine or theory promoting a negative account or representation of the founding and history of the United States of America. This bill also states such prohibition includes but is not limited to teaching that the United States was founded on racism. With the proposed bill called an Act Relative to Teaching Loyalty Bill, many will question the word loyalty. Who exactly are they being loyal to? And this is what we talked about in my class that we had yesterday. The Florida State Education Department rejected 54 math books from its curriculum because of the inclusion of CRT and the Common Core learning concept. Of the 54, 28 were officially rejected because they incorporated prohibited topics or unsolicited strategies, including critical race theory. They banned in math books. So this is just another recap. What else are we? Allow me to introduce the 6 categories that we'll be talking about: media and pop culture, healthcare, the Black aesthetic, U.S. history, sports, and the colonization of time. So this first one, of course, is about media and pop culture, and this is my personal X-Men theory that I'm going to be writing a paper on in one of my classes. So this is just a little sneak peek of what the paper is about really quick. So marketing blackness in mainstream media. So like Tiana, I really love comic books. So I noticed while me loving comic books, of course I'm getting into the cinematic versions of those same comic books. So the comic book X-Men, of course, is about mutants cinematic version of the mutants. So they were a fictional comic strip team of mutants born with superhuman abilities that was created in the early 1960s. And like I said, these mutants are born with the X gene that gives them these superhuman-like qualities. As a result of their differences, mutants are subject to extreme discrimination and prejudices throughout their lives. That's in the picture. Between the mutants and the humans is the mutants are afraid of the mutants because they think they're dangerous. They feel like the mutants are not controlling their own bodies and or their genetics. They don't trust the mutants because they feel kind of insecure because they feel like maybe the mutants might power up against the whole society and I guess take over the world. Yet the mutants in the comics hold no threat. They're minding their business. They're doing what they do and just living how they live. So I was just reading. This just sounds familiar to me. Ultimately, mutants deal with depression and discrimination not because they are dangerous, only because they are different. As the meme goes, I don't find that considering the harsh treatment that mutants receive from the general population. Many would say that mutants are based on Black people in America because the similarities are both populations, mutants and African Americans, live in constant oppression that as a result of their genetics. The fictional mutant X gene could perhaps compare to this MC1R gene, which is known. Superhuman abilities could arguably be intuition and empathy. Both populations are seen as dangerous, lazy, and very combative, despite constantly proving their abilities. Both populations are subject to innocent killings by their oppressors, and both populations were taken from their homes and either detained, forced to work, and or put to death. So, so next category is healthcare practices Black skin is tougher than others. It is popularly known that there are implicit biases and racial disparities in healthcare. From illnesses such as cancer, prenatal care, HIV/AIDS, to the common cold, research shows that Black people in America are more likely to be infected, less likely to be cured. This could be due to the common westernized belief that Black people have inferior bodies. Now, if you're asking yourself, where am I getting this from? I'm going to tell y'all in the next slide. This is the thermometer conspiracy. So, as you can see by the picture, It was most popularly known to be used during the time of the Civil War to help study the deceased bodies of Union soldiers. Built in this barometer is a feature that corrects race. Therefore, to use a device, you must enter the subject's race. So if you're testing your lungs, why do you need to know what color you are? Former President Thomas Jefferson speaks on this belief of black inferiority and agreement and states in his notes on the state of Virginia. Now, this is exactly the way he said it. Not a big word, so I'm going to read it very slowly so y'all can understand. And I can understand. Perhaps, too, a difference of structure in the pulmonary apparatus, which the late ingenious experimentalist has discovered to be the principal regulator of animal heat, may have disabled them from extricating and the act of inspiration. So much of that fluid from the outer air or obliged them in expiration to part with more of it. Yeah, what it means? What it means? I don't know. Look at it. Okay. So Jefferson's comment of deficient pulmonary function in blacks was used to justify slavery, believing that forced labor was a way to vitalize the blood of deficient black slaves. By Jefferson's logic, slavery was what kept black individuals alive. Samuel Cartwright, which is a plantation owner, physician, and slaveholder, probably agreed with Jefferson with the idea that slavery was beneficial to black people. He promoted the idea that because black people had lower pulmonary capacity, forced labor was good for them. This is what he said, Samuel Cartwright. It is the red vital blood sent to the brain that liberates your mind when under the white man's control. And it is the one of sufficiency of red vital blood that changed their minds to ignorance and barbarism when in freedom. Interesting. That's why they have the race correction. So this next one is limited to black state. I might need to figure out who that was in the middle, but you know.
Patrice Russian.
So also yesterday in class we were talking about the Crown Act. So I just felt it necessary to include this one little slide because when I was looking it up, it hit so close to home because not only was it recent, but it happened in North Carolina, and not only was it recent, it happened in North Carolina, it happened right up the street. So on May 15th, 2021, in Durham County, North Carolina, Nicole Powell was supposed to cut her hair during the softball game. The umpires of the game complained of the distraction and stated that her beads and braids violated the set of rules set by the National Federation of State High School Associations. Although the policy permits, quote unquote, flag items no longer used to control the hair, such as bobby pins, barrettes, and hair clips. Why does America try to limit black creativity / expression? You guys can ponder on. Click on the next slide. In grade school, please think about what you were taught about concerning the following wars. How did it start? The American Revolution, the Civil War, and World War II. So, upon trying to figure out what I'm going to write my thesis on, I came across the book, The 1619 Project. So I got to reading and reading. Well, actually, this is only the preface. It says, and I quote, conveniently left out of our founding mythology, that paragraph again, is the fact that one of the primary reasons the colonists decided to declare their independence from Britain was because they wanted to protect the institution of slavery. The linking of slavery and the American Revolution directly challenged the cornerstone of national identity embedded in our public history. The narratives taught us in elementary school, museums, and memorials, Hollywood movies, and any other scholarly work as well. Free agency. So, me and my classmates, one of my fellow co-workers, was at Humanities when we were talking about it, and they gave me this idea, and I was like, this can't be true. Let me look this up. I just know this ain't true, but it is true. It's true, y'all. Many critics have been opposing free agency in the NBA, comparing it to modern-day slave auction. Free agency is a concept in sports, in this case the NBA, where the owner of a team is allowed to buy, sell, or trade players. There's only one black NBA franchise owner, Michael Jordan, who owns the Humanities. As of 2020, the percentage of black NBA players are 74.2%. Now, this is what Louis Farrakhan said. Basketball courts are a training ground for basketball penetration. Well, that's what you do in sports. You run up and down the field, show them how quick you are, how clever you are, and they're sitting there watching you turn you. That's a good one. I'll get him. I'm drafting. That was a interesting statement he said, and I felt like it needed to be included into this part. And last but not least, my favorite, the colonization of time. They messing with that too? Yes, they are. They are messing with that too. So, in the United States, we operate using the Gregorian calendar, or the Issifou. This was created in 1582 by Pope Gregory the VIII, which you see in that picture. There are 31 days in a month, as y'all know, except for February, starts from 29. I don't understand a leap year, but that's just the rules. 12 months and 365 days a year. However, this truth in America is not true to other people in the world. The Ethiopian calendar system was created in 400 AD. Now that's before, way before 1582. Just let y'all know. This calendar consists of 13 months in a year. Every month has exactly 30 days, and the 13 months we have 5 or 6 days, depending on their region. So Ethiopians celebrate New Year's on September 11th, and I found that very interesting. It's like the day we kind of mourn and they celebrate New Year's that day. So why is this important? And I know the question y'all asked, and this is what I was asking. Is they behind or is we too far ahead? In March 1st, 1896, traditional warriors, farmers, and pastoralists, as well as women, defeated the Italian army in northern town of Adwa. The outcome of this battle ensured Ethiopia's independence, making it one of the only African countries never to be colonized. So as of today, April 22nd, in Ethiopia, it is Martia 14th, 2014. Now, the math is about 7 years different than we are. That's beyond me. Black Americans in a situation. The Egyptian belief is that the heart is in the center of the mind. So according to this proverb, still in completely demolishing parts of our history is the perfect way to completely colonize or destroy an entire civilization. Why is what I just told you all talk about her? Why is that something that when I was reading I was like, huh? And I was telling y'all I was like, huh? I just don't. It's just interesting. It's very interesting. So the essential questions take away. Why does Black critical thought call? Is there a call to action? You tell me, scholars. I feel like being here right now, listening to these presentations and showing interest in this topic is the call to action. Because, of course, when you hear something exciting, it makes you want to learn. Could that be a call to action? I believe there is.
Another fantastic presentation. Y'all, let's give Ashton another round of applause. That was just so informative, and the way that you infused the language through was just so spicy. So thank you so much. We will now move to Talia Gray, who's also a graduate student here in North Carolina A&T's Department of English, specifically English and African American Literature program. Her topic is What Shapes the Black Man? A discussion of Black men's morality and vulnerability in film. Toxic masculinity has been a heavily discussed topic in recent years. Analyzing the way masculinity is portrayed is a common form of gender discourse. However, if one considers factors like race, colonization, and class, the conversation becomes quite different. Oftentimes, members of the African diaspora are portrayed as a monolith in film, represented by static, unchanging character archetypes. As more quality representation has been released in media, the struggles of black men have been increasingly on display. Movies like Black Panther, directed by Ryan Coogler, and Moonlight, directed by Barry Jenkins, portray the internal and interpersonal struggles of several black male characters. And I believe she's ready. So take it away, Talika.
I'm Talia Gray. I'm a first year graduate student. What shapes the black man in film? A discussion of black men's morality and vulnerability in popular film. And like mentioned earlier, I'll be talking about popular films, Black Panther and Moonlight. So I'm warning y'all now. And feature a majority black cast with a black male protagonist. It is also important to note that both films were directed by black men who are Barry Jenkins. Are kind of general. So as far as morality, particularly emotions that are not meant to harm anyone. They're emotions just for the sake of expressing them. And later on, talk about how critical I want to use critical race theory to excavate the role systemic racism plays in characters' lives. So, discussion. I tend to look at the ways these men display their vulnerability as well as their we will look at the ways these men face conflict, interact with other people, and gain or as we all know, things that happen to our child often affect what happens to you or how you act. Let's start with T'Challa. At the beginning of Black Panther, of his new title, quite literally, I know that was between the waterfall and the other rest of the title. As the only part of the film scene T'Challa, it is implied throughout the film that T'Challa has been born on the earth age for his role. T'Challa's first pregnancy with Dr. Carter served as the first example of his for his father. So, y'all know there's this beautiful blue and purple scene where him and his father asked his father for advice, and he started to cry and said that he's not ready to live without his father. And his father said, you know, that into my mind, that is all over the fairway while I'm singing, you are a good man with a good heart, and his heart of a good man. Which we all know kind of foreshadows some of the fathers that he wanted to be for us. So T'Challa kind of struggles with what to do as the new king. We see him asking for advice from his friends, his family, from his advisors, and they all kind of give him different answers. Some say we should stick to what your father has done, stay isolated. Some say when we're out, we should give aid to other countries. But in the end, he kind of struggles to figure out what is the right direction to take the country. But as I said on the side, no one is predicting, but his biggest obstacle was Eric Killmonger. So Eric is the son of the late President Reagan, making him a member of the royal family of Wakanda. It revealed that Wakanda killed off his brother and refused T'Challa to return Wakanda. After his father's death, Eric left America with no recognition of his paternal side of his family. So while Eric is aware of his origin and where he's from, no one in Wakanda recognizes him as a part of the country or has any ties to him at all. So let's comparatively talk about Eric's experience in the Antarctica. So instead of going to where T'Challa went, which is like a savannah-like area where there's trees, you see the other panthers and it's representative of Africa or Wakanda. Eric goes back to his childhood apartment, faced with his father. And when his father kind of recognizes that, I left you too soon, or, what have I done? I think he says, Eric kind of bursts off his emotions and says, everybody dies. It is also important to note that, I don't know if y'all remember, but there's a scene he shifts between his childlike appearance and his adult appearance. Which is interesting because when he said everybody dies, he said that as a child. It kind of lets us know that he was hardened as a child and maybe stunted his emotional expression. Now let's talk about Eric as king. So as we remember, as soon as he became king, he started some major changes. He did not have a whole lot of regard for the traditions of Wakanda or wanted to hear what his advisors had to say. He had his own goals, which some of us may agree with what his goals were, but the way he went about them was through violence and fear, to liberate white people across the country, but also subsequently enhance his own power. So now let's compare Eric and T'Challa. Despite being relatives, both characters grew up distinctly different. T'Challa grew up in a purpose for his life. Eric lost his father at a young age with little to no support. It is also important to know that Eric spent the majority of his life in the United States, where he saw the effects of colonization firsthand. Again, these comparative acts are direct foils of one another. Each man is so focused with the death of their father figure, as well as their desire to continue their father's legacy. A key difference between them is that by the end of the film, T'Challa recognizes the mistakes of not only his father, but all of his ancestors. In his second experience in the sexual plane, T'Challa himself his father and his ancestors, and asserts, you were wrong. You were all wrong. Throughout the film, the audience is shown that where T'Challa has a distinct moral compass that he adheres to, Killmonger has none and seeks to achieve his goals by any means necessary. And when I say that distinct moral compass, we see T'Challa be merciful in areas. We see him be aware of his image, be aware of the reputation that he wants to have his country to have. We also see his wants to protect people in his life. Whereas also Killmonger, at one point he had like an accomplice who he eventually kills with little to no regard. We don't even know her name. Like he's very mischievous and tricks his way to get to Wakanda. So now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Moonlight. So the very first part of the film is called Little, which is representative of the main character's childhood nickname. He's called Little mostly because he's a small child and also because he's soft-spoken, quite shy, and he also gets bullied because his kids as being feminine. It also becomes clear in the portion of the film that Sharman's mother is and often neglects him. So now we're going to talk about Juan and Issifou. So they kind of come into the movie as somewhat parental figures because of a chance encounter Juan had with Sharman. There's a particular emphasis on Juan because he's the only father figure that Sharman has. You don't see a mention of Sharman's father ever throughout the movie, so Juan is the only male figure he has. And also there's a bit of a conflict there because even as a young child, he's supposed to be like the And so Juan, in a way, is representative of the very thing that has destroyed his relationship with his mother. So again, that is a moral context of he's aware of what they're fighting on, and something's kind of hard for talking about it. However, this doesn't keep them from having a relationship, mostly because, I mean, as a child, he doesn't really have to choice. He's going to kind of go towards the people who show him the most kindness and love. So in the second part of the film, which is self-titled, but it's called Simon, we see him as an adolescent. So in this portion of the film, he is mostly in high school, I believe, and it is shown that Juan has passed away, but Teresa is still part of his life, and Teresa still is like a mother figure for him. It also is pointed out that Carmen's mother's addiction has progressed, and now to me, it mostly looked like he was fending for himself. He had no person to depend on other than Teresa. So now, let's discuss the relationship between Chiron and Kevin. Throughout the movie, Chiron has most of the friends. He's bullied severely, which becomes a big part of what I'm about to discuss next. But his only companion that is somewhat kind to him is of his peer Kevin. So Kevin and Chiron have known each other since the in the third part, Little. And in a rare moment of intimacy and vulnerability, they're sitting on the beach and they're talking, and Chiron says to Kevin, "I tried so much sometimes, I feel like I'm just trying to stop." This moment between young men did not last. In the following scene, Kevin joins Chiron's bully in a particularly violent display. They beat him up, like, really badly. He's bloody, he has scars on his face. And in retaliation, Chiron attacks his main character. This is really the first time we see Chiron really retaliate against him. And it is a very graphic scene. He grabs a chair, and he hits him, and it results in him being arrested, and he's not attention. The movie Black, we see an adult Chiron. Now, up until this point, we kind of see him as a child. He's always been outspoken, very sensitive, and Black is nothing like that. Black has transformed himself into basically the image of Juan. He has become a drug dealer. He has built himself up. When he does reunite with Kevin, he says, "I built myself from the ground up. The same person that he was when they were children. He has become and because he recognizes the fact that he did it intentionally, he has disguised his nature and has become the ideal version of masculinity. So let's talk about all three of these characters. So T'Challa, Eric, Killmonger, and Chiron, we are shown distinct patterns in Black manhood. Each character's morality and vulnerability is greatly shaped by the presence of love and support in their lives, particularly that of a father figure. At some point, all of these men aspire to be like the most influential male figure in their lives. Albeit T'Challa is the only one who recognizes errors in his father's leadership and wishes to be better than his father. So you may be asking yourself, what does this have to do with privilege? It has a lot to do with that. Because to think further, because we are all scholars, we have to continue to ask ourselves why. So why is T'Challa the only one who develops his own moral compass separate from his father's teaching? Some may argue that T'Challa was in a separate economic class from Eric and Chiron, or that he had a better support system. But despite humble beginnings, Eric was able to access a quality education. He went to MIT. I don't know if y'all know MIT, but it's a very good school. Like, very, very good. And he rises up in the military ranks, and I don't know if y'all know, but that comes with medicine. Once you get enough of those medallions on your uniform, that comes with medicine and privileges as well. And Chiron has a very good mother figure in the character Teresa. to clothe him, gives him a place to lay his head, essentially acting as a very However, if we consider critical race theory and what we've all been talking about we can conclude that the most substantive advantage T'Challa has is that he grew up not having experienced racism. Whereas Chiron and Eric are shaped by the limitations of a racial system that they are based in. And when I say that, I mean Chiron grew up specifically in Celtic era. They both grew up in areas where they had certain experiences that are common between Black Americans. Particularly Chiron, because he does juvenile detention, which is where he learns so many of the things that helped him become Black. He learns how to draw. He watches the other. Y'all know what I mean. This is where he becomes familiar with it, and we all know that certain Black communities are really disturbed, not necessarily by our own doing. But I also would like to point out that I believe that part of Eric's reason for being able to excel and knowing so much rising to the military ranks is because he had a clear vision of Wakanda. He knew that there was a place for him to go where he could be free from systemic racism. Now, what his goals were once he got there, that was on him, but he was aware that there was a place where Black people were free and Black people were achieving and thriving, where Chiron didn't necessarily have that knowledge. So, my closing thought, to me, these films demonstrate the ways grief, past trauma, and upbringing display their vulnerability. The pressures placed on Black American men, particularly, are shown to the audience through the characters Chiron and Eric. When compared to T'Challa, these characters struggle with violence and morality become a clear product of the environment that they are based in.
Outstanding, outstanding. Dr. Issifou, in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the Q&A, if that's okay. And what I'd like to ask the presenters to do is, the three presenters, maybe if you all would sort of sit in a panel style right here. And I did just jot down one question for each person, totally unscripted. You all don't know what the question is, but while I put a question together, maybe some of our audience members may have a question for you. Hopefully you all might have jotted something down. And the first question I have is for our first presenter, which is Tiana. Tiana's topic again was Catwoman, Black Woman, and When Selena Kyle is Black. So my question for you is, in your research, have you come across any fan favorites of who portrays the female love interest in all of the different characterizations of the female love interest?
Most commonly, a lot of people appreciate Catwoman the most, and I didn't realize this, but in a lot of criticism, she's kind of viewed as like an icon. I guess that makes sense because the 1960s version of Catwoman is like in this very campy comedic show, so of course like I guess the lavishness and the exaggerated nature of the character kind of resonated with people who sort of like that stuff. Also Michelle Pfeiffer, she's another fan favorite, and a lot of people also like Zoe Kravitz, who played Catwoman. So those three were like the most common ones that I saw.
Okay, thank you. Who, show of hands, who's heard of Eartha Kitt before? Okay, so almost everybody. Okay, great. So I know you all are familiar with the other two. Thank you, Tiana. Okay, Ashton's presentation was What They Not Telling Us, the Importance in Critical Race Theory. Ashton, my question for you, totally unscripted, live, is how have you seen instances of Black vernacular English
the Oscars is just not giving. When you read it, you're like, what is all that talking about? Well, that's not what it's not giving me. So I think they just use it and just think it's popular, but they just don't use it in the right context.
Very good example. The next presenter, or our final presenter, was Tamia Gray, and again, her topic was What Shapes the Black Man, a discussion of Black men's morality and vulnerability in film. My question for you is, how have films helped to tear down or further exacerbate toxic Black male masculinity?
Particularly the films that I talked about, they really try to tear those things down, but I also show how like traits, using violence as trying to enforce fear. But also, in all of them, there are good examples, like Juan, who Chiron's father figure, or how he is honestly almost like the perfect character who has little to no flaws at all. I think there are those good and bad.
Thank you. Very good response. Now, I wanted to have a question for each person. So at this time, we'll just take audience questions for any or all of our presenters. Just a show of hands, and I'll call on you. Yes, thank you.
First, Ms. Johnson, thank you very much. I'm Dr. Bryant.
Dr. Bryant! Oh my goodness!
You've done a fantastic job with your presentation. I appreciate your enthusiasm and your food offerings.
Oh.
I have comments for everyone and two questions I just go with my comments. I think you all did a job well done. Consider this practice for those of you all who are interested in writing a thesis. You're well underway. Especially you, Ms. Bryce, who come in saying, I didn't know all this stuff, and I just feel dumb, Dr. Bryant. You did not seem dumb at all up there. I appreciate your integrating Black English into your presentation, the memes, humor. Your presentation was decolonizing, if you will, and so I appreciate all that you offered us in your authentic self in presenting just as you are. All right, so I hope and trust that you will keep that way of being throughout your tenure here. Ms. Wilder, I have a question for you. You started off telling us that you were talking about Black feminist theory, but I was confused as to how you use Black feminist theory to come to what conclusion. Can you exactly explain to us what is your conclusion regarding, is it Black Catwoman, and how did you use Black feminist theory to get there?
I kind of messed up when I was saying it. It was kind of guiding my thoughts. It was the basis that I kind of went off of. And ain't all a woman is like always sitting there. And so when I was kind of trying to look at comparisons, I was kind of consciously thinking about her. However, what I ended up realizing was that even though I could look at it through a Black feminist lens, I kind of realized it was more of a structuralism problem rather than specifically a Black feminist problem. And I didn't explain that really well. I realized that they were trying to keep with the ways that Catwoman and Selena Kyle had been portrayed before, but they weren't taking into account the implications that can accidentally occur when they, change colors. Like, they weren't being very careful in trying to create, I guess, nuanced diversity is what I'm trying to say. And I just think they need to be a bit more careful with that. Like, maybe if somebody who was in the background didn't know about the Black feminist concept, like those images of Black women, they could have been like, hey, we got Halle Berry kind of doing this sexy walk, and placing this emphasis on her body and emphasizing this sexual nature. Maybe we shouldn't do that because unfortunately it kind of ties into this negative image of Black women. If somebody just kind of knew that, on the team, then they have been able to prevent that kind of implication. If that makes sense.
So then are you saying that has been some of the issue with Halle Berry playing Catwoman?
Oh, not just her, just that was an example.
thank you for that. Ms. Gray. Beth is gay. Why didn't you talk about that at all? His mother's just vulnerability. He was hiding sexuality.
So I did recognize that I did not talk about that. I wanted to kind of, for the sake of time, but also because I wanted to keep it comparable between the other characters. But he is gay, and I think I do kind of skate over that, but also I always wanted to highlight the parts I like highlighting scenes that I found it showed that the vulnerability and the morality.
Because sexuality is vulnerability.
It is.
Openness. I think omitting that hurts your presentation. You know, that's a large part of his character. And so although you're trying to make it comparable, you still have to figure out ways to compare those two despite the differences or because of the differences. Okay, so in the future, that was real important to me. So important. Okay, and so, you know, if you are planning on working on this paper again or presenting it again, reconsider entering in sexuality. Because that's a large part of Black male masculinity. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Bryant, and thank you all thank you for the points for our presenters. And what I will say is, before we go to you, Javon, and I know we'll run over a little bit with the questions, I didn't know who Black was. I'd never heard of him before, so thank you for introducing him to me because I had no idea who it was. I'm kind of, you know, a little unaware, and my co-peers in this class helped me a lot with realizing some things that I never even was aware of. So thank you all so much.
So great job, everyone. I'm happy to share this with you guys. You know, a cohort, a part of your cohort as a graduate student as well. So especially for like was a big part of you guys' presentation. And I was believe that femininity and masculinity is a racial characteristic. It seemed as though it was. I don't know. But do you think the representation of masculinity and feminine is a true representation of the authenticity of Blackness in you guys, you know, presentation? Because like Dr. Brown said, just kind of seemed, especially for Talia, that y'all was kind of like separating of like what's true Blackness and what's masculine and feminine. If any of that makes sense.
Are we viewing them separate?
Or is what you guys consider Black, does it have to be masculine or feminine?
For me, I will say I think it is a little separate in my head just because I was looking distinctly at white women and Black women, so it was kind of a little bit separated. But I don't think like in general it's separated. If that makes sense. I feel like that didn't make any sense. Sorry.
Similarly, I was mostly looking at the male characters, so I wasn't so separated for the purposes of my presentation, but in general, I don't think they have to be separate. I think it's fluid, and I think it depends on the circumstance. But yeah.
A lot of like fictionalization of movie characters and a lot of different shows and comics. Do you equate that to it not being able to be because a lot of it is superhero movies. So do you
I think they're ready to respond.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I think the basis of at least my approach, and so particularly you and I a true story. I want to see representations of humanity, and so that's part of why I look at even action heroes or more realistic versions and look at are we reflecting humanity, and if so, what are we saying about
Like a lot of our media, our values and our culture, and so we kind of leave long gone. So what's portrayed in these pieces of media is, well, I would hope to be good representation, because movies that are left behind and a lot of the that continue to be passed down even today. Like, we kind of make those connections between us now and the past. So I think it is important, because that's what they're mainly going to be looking at. I mean, of course, there'll be other artists, I think most of the regular everyday people, they'll look back at our films of today and be like, oh yeah.
So when you get to graduate school, theory class. So one of the theories we're learning about is structure was basically saying that everything is about structure. So nothing is kind of like an original thought, it always comes from somewhere else. So with that being said, I feel like when it comes to critical race theory, things that these fictional characters that they're coming up with, they're coming from somewhere. Just like when I was talking about the X-Men was created in the 1960s about people born different and got all these different families and trying to figure out where they get that from. So I just feel like it's important. Yeah, like they said, if we show it in film, people are going to, well, today, kids are not going to want to Google, in the dirt and find 5,000. So they won't watch it in the movie. So I think that's more important for us to recognize how we're not whether it's real or fake, that we just need to get our faces out there more. Thank you.
Outstanding. And I love it that we had a question from every entity in here, from undergrad, from faculty, from graduates. And I just could not be more proud of you all. And we are going over just a little bit, but before Dr. Issifou comes up for his closing remarks, I just want to say that a great segue was if I would have been able to do my presentation. It's sort of an 11th hour kind of thing. That's why I wasn't on here. So it really worked out really well. But it would have been great because you had the fictionalization presented here. But I talked about the crime act and critical race theory as it relates to that. And I feel like that's something that's living and breathing and real, and all of us are dealing with as we watch this go through the different levels to become an actual piece of federal legislation. Thank you all very much. I've enjoyed being your moderator, your MC, your mistress of ceremonies, and we're going to bring up Dr. Issifou to close us out.
Race theory be contained in Paul Valéry's quote. For Valéry, if my hands were full of the truth, I will never open them. Quote. So, because people truth about what they have been lying about. So it's why people are not really happy when we deal with it. So coming back to the presenters, thank you so much. Reconnaissance is a great word that means you show gratitude to someone who is a benefactor. And I will say, I don't have anything to give you, but take my reconnaissance home. Thank you so much.
And that concludes our evening. I will tell you all that in addition to the food offerings that Dr. Bryant so eloquently called these, I want you to take them with you. And I also have some bags, some baggies. I'm a couponer. Y'all remember that from last semester. So I just put these together. Y'all take it. Again, COVID's not over, so you'll need the hand sanitizer and the other goodies that's in here. So help yourself.